All right. Well, as I said, I am Janie Maxwell. I'm the Executive Director of the Illinois Farmers Market Association, and we are really pleased to have you here joining us today. Well, who is the Illinois Farmers Market Association? Well, just briefly, you can read our mission statement, but we do primarily three things. We try to promote farmers markets as much as we possibly can, telling the story of local food and its importance across Illinois. We also try to provide training and best practices for farmers market operators and vendors. We work to support the local food system in whatever way we can. And then the last part is we try to work with our stakeholders to identify barriers to successful farmers markets and try to address those, whether that's on the state level, the local level, municipal level, whatever that may be. ILFMA is a membership-based organization. We'd really appreciate your membership if that's something you'd be willing to do. We do try to provide some benefits, definitely some discounts, especially if you're interested in coming to the Everything Local conference that's held in Springfield in January. But even if you decide not to become a member of ILFMA, if you want to stay connected, we do send out a bi-monthly newsletter. You just go to ilfma.org and there's a news tab, and on that tab you can go ahead and sign up and make sure that you get a newsletter from ILFMA with all the information that we think is current, and then we also put in partner information, even some job listings, different things like that that are hopefully helpful to you as people doing the work in the field. ILFMA does a variety of things, but this is some of the projects that we're working on. We're a partner in many grants, which we are really pleased to be a partner in grants and try and take the information about farmers markets and share it with all of our partners, as well as gain the resources we need to continue this training and education that we do. We also work, as I said, at the state level. We are part of the Illinois Department of Agriculture's Local Food Purchasing Agreement Advisory. We sit on Farm to Food Bank. We sit on Farm to School, always trying to represent the voice of small to mid-sized grower producers and other types of vendors that are present at farmers markets. But if you don't have it already, definitely put January 17th to 19th in Springfield on your calendar for From Food to Flowers, Everything Local, the Illinois Food, Farmers Market, and Specialty Crop Conference with the Illinois Farm Bureau and Illinois Specialty Crop Association in Springfield. Don't want to miss it. One of the things that we really do work on is creating networks and partnerships. ILFMA is probably a relatively small organization, but our reach is significant because of the partnerships that we share. One of those partnerships is a shared database that is called, that is run by Market Maker. And when you look at it, you can see all the different organizations that are a part of this database. What that means is through API technology is that you can go to ilfma.org, you can go to the Land Connection, you can go to IDOA, and you can search and find the same information on all of those different websites that pertain to partners that have registered within the Market Maker system. It's really, really key to be found and to find others that are working in this local food arena, and it will keep you connected. And the best part, it's free. All right. So the information that is available that you input, you own your own data that you put into this system, then can be shared across multiple platforms. For example, you would become potentially part of the Buy Fresh, Buy Local directory. You would be found on the ILFMA website. And then in partnership with the Department of Agriculture, and Specialty Growers Association, we've developed an app that's called What's in Season. And what's in season is important because it's great to know what's actually in season. But it also contains all the same information and data that you'll find on the website. And we find this is really, really key as a next level way to connect with consumers. In addition, through a grant that the Land Connection received, you can also then download recipe cards directly from the What's in Season app about particularly those vegetables that are a little bit, let's say, less familiar, ones that maybe people aren't as familiar with how you might cook or prepare. This is what a robust profile can look like. But again, the information that is in here has all been added by the participant. ILFMA or none of these other organizations own your data. You own it. So it reflects whatever you have added. So the more information you populate this with, the easier or more searchable you become. And it's also a great way for you to talk a little bit about your business, connected to Facebook, connected to your website, Instagram, wherever, so that people can get more information than what is found on this one specific page. It's easy. You go in, create a profile. You can get to it through the Find a Market tab on the ilfma.org website. Include your logo, tag your vendors. It's kind of like one of those business to business things where if you are a vendor, you can tag your market or the market channels where you sell. And if you are a market, you can tag the vendors that are in your system, because very often people are looking for farmers markets, but they're also looking for specific types of product, or they're looking for very specific vendors. And this is one way to make sure you can be found. Tell your story, and then there's a supplemental questions that you have to answer to be part of the Buy Fresh, Buy Local, but we highly recommend that you do that as well. So that's just a really quick overview, but one of the things that ILFMA can do for all of you, or this database can do for you, is for you to participate in it, so that, again, it's a very robust, well-developed database with many, many features that we're not going to go into here that should help you enhance your business and help you be found. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Libby to talk about how to select your market.
All right, thank you. And Janie, will you advance the slides, or you want me to?
I think it's probably easier if I do.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So as I said earlier, wearing a few hats with this webinar, I'll kind of keep my vendor hat first and foremost. One thing that I did neglect to mention is I have managed markets down here for about 2 years as well, right after we started doing markets. So I kind of learned the vendor side and the market management side kind of at the same time. So that kind of gives me a unique kind of perspective and insight to markets as well. Janie, you can go ahead and advance the next slide. So again, like I mentioned, president, newly elected of the Farmers Market Association, assistant director with FoodWorks down here. With FoodWorks, we are working towards providing a sustainable food economy to the southernmost 23 counties in Southern Illinois. And then our business is Glacier's End. You can go ahead and advance to the next one, please. So when thinking about selecting or looking at a market, a lot of this is kind of from when we did our research, but also looking at what's suggested from other people as well. One of the main things is really to kind of put on paper what you're wanting from a market, what you're wanting for your business. Really looking at kind of your mission statement, and then looking at market needs and wants too. I really encourage people to research and visit markets in your area. If you're traveling, visit other markets. As vendors, it helps us because I'm always getting new ideas or things to kind of freshen up our display or our signage, or for ideas for new products. Also visiting markets in your area is going to let you just see, what does that market look like? Is it super heavy on cottage foods? Is it super heavy on crafts? So it'll kind of give you an idea of what's out there. Another thing when kind of looking at selecting a market is looking to see if they have any programs or offerings. Um, I work with Snap and Link in markets. As a vendor, I really that impresses me when markets have it, because it makes foods, healthy local foods, accessible to everybody. And I want to be in a market like that. Also seeing, and we'll talk about these a little bit further, but if a market has kids offerings, that's going to be a family friendly event, and that's going to be a market that's probably going to be more robust. Lastly, when kind of looking at how to select a market, kind of looking at your off season, and we'll talk about it here further in a minute. But really kind of assessing, if you did a market this season, how did it go? Do you want to do it again? Or if you haven't done it and you're looking in an off season, really just kind of researching markets, to get a feel for how they are, what their requirements are. As farmers, as business owners, when markets are done, that's kind of, a lot of people think that's your downtime, which it is, but it's also time to really kind of get prepared for the next season and kind of get your ducks in a row. Advance to the next slide, please. Again, when kind of thinking about your market needs and wants, some things to consider, again, kind of putting on paper your goals and vision. It'll help connect you to markets better. Some people really look at markets as more of a social outlet. Some people want it to be, an income outlet. Some people rather go closer rather than farther. So again, kind of just putting on paper what you envision your business, what you want your vision to be. And then looking at market mission statements to really kind of find the right fit. Again, talking about proximity to markets, considering how far are you willing to travel. Obviously, the closer, the better, the less amount of time you have to drive, the less in gas. But for some people, that might not be an option. There may not be markets in your area, or they may be smaller. My husband and I, in the 5 years, have done probably 10 to 12 different markets to really kind of find what fits us and where we fit in. And have recently added last year a market where we travel about an hour and a half each way. That's farther than I said I would ever go, but it's a much larger market, and we found that some things kind of outweigh the distance. So again, kind of taking into account and thinking about those things. Also thinking about the location of the market. Is it inside versus outside? If it's outside, you're going to be dealing with weather, with heat. Thinking about, do they have restrooms? Kind of just taking into account where that market is located. Days and times of market are very important to be, aware of. Is it something that's in the morning? Is it in a market that's in the afternoon, that it's going to be hot and you're standing on a pavement? Kind of thinking about that. Also, vendor fees. Some markets charge a flat fee for one market. Some charge a flat fee for a seasonal rate. Some markets charge based on sales. So just kind of taking that into account when you're considering maybe what market you want to be a part of. A big one is state and county requirements and fees. Pretty much every county is going to have some different things. So one thing that I will kind of repeat throughout today is if you're doing anything that requires working with your health department, so cottage foods, meats, dairies, things like that. I highly recommend establishing a good relationship with your health department, because that's going to go so far in helping you in your business, to be on good terms with them and to make sure you're always up on all of the requirements that you need to be. Insurance requirements is another key thing to think about when you're getting ready to do markets. Some markets do have a liability requirement. Some don't. I can tell you from personal experiences and from seeing other vendors, um, I think everybody should have liability insurance because you don't want your tent blowing over, knocking over your booth, somebody else's booth. If somebody gets hurt, you just want to make sure that you're protected as a business and as individuals. So again, really looking to see what market requirements are on that. Also, another thing to consider is parking. Some markets you can park right by your vendor stall. Other ones you have to move your car, you may have to walk a ways. So just kind of keeping things like that in mind. Next slide, please. If you're wanting to kind of figure out where to find markets at, there's a lot of different ways. Like Janie mentioned, Market Maker is a good way to find markets around the state. Also reaching out to some of your local organizations, Farm Bureau, University of Illinois Extension offices. They usually can tell you kind of where markets are. Word of mouth, social media is a good way. You can search markets, and then also websites too. You know, and it may be you're in a small area and you don't have a ton of markets to choose from, but if you do, I always look at these to see what does their website look like? What is their social media presence? If it's a market that's not advertising a whole lot, maybe they don't need to, or maybe they just don't have a lot of customers coming. So again, you know, I kind of look at this as a vendor when you're looking at markets is almost like you're going to a job interview. So the more research you can kind of do ahead of time to see again, do these markets kind of fit what you're looking for? Next slide, please. Kind of again, doing some more market research, visiting markets. It's usually best to do it a little bit later in the market rather than at the start of the market. It's not going to be as busy, and the market manager would probably have a little more time to talk to you, as will the vendors. So kind of looking to see what the layout is, what the culture of the market is like. Like I said, talking to the market manager, and they may not have time to talk to you at that market. They may schedule a time to talk to you. But as a market manager, that's something that always has impressed me is when vendors kind of do research before coming to the market and ask questions. You can also ask longstanding vendors for feedback. Most of the times, vendors are going to be pretty honest with other vendors. And if a market's doing something very well, it's a well ran and organized market, vendors are going to tell other vendors about it. On the flip side, if there's some not good things to that market, vendors are going to talk about it as well. But you can use that feedback to help you kind of make some informed decisions. Like I said, also looking at the social media presence of markets, you know, how and where they're advertising. Some markets really promote individual vendors, which is great. Some don't, that's fine. But again, kind of looking to see what you're wanting from a market and then matching that up. Also looking to see how long a market has operated. If they've been around for a long time, chances are they're doing something right. Versus if they're newer, you know, maybe they're still kind of working out some kinks, or maybe they're just rocking it from the start. And then really kind of the big thing in looking at markets is there a variety of vendors? You know, we don't really want to look at vendors doing similar things as competition. Hopefully there's enough customers coming to markets that markets can support having vendors of a few different things, vendors of the same things. But it would also be good to, you know, just make sure, like, if you're a baker that, you know, a market doesn't already have 10 bakers. Chances are, you know, you may have vendors not doing the best when there's so much people of the same kind of product. So really looking to see what is at those markets. Next slide, please. Kind of some more market research. kind of finding out who runs the market and makes the rules and regs. Is it the market? Is it a board for the market? Is it a nonprofit? Is it one individual? You can also talk to the market manager or vendors about kind of the customer base and attendance. Also keeping in mind that markets usually, some markets will offer like permanent spots. So is it a seasonal where you're kind of guaranteed your same spot, you're guaranteed, to be there weekly? Or is it that every week you have to call in to see if there's a spot? Also, one of the big things is to ask market managers, are they accepting new vendors? You don't want to go through all this and then find out that that market is looking for anybody for this next season. Also finding out what's required to sell at the market. Again, we talked about insurance, but a lot of markets have regulations on tents, weights, signage. So kind of finding that information out as well. Another thing that we added on here is bathroom accessibility. I do a Saturday market every now and then that's 6 hours and they do not have bathrooms there. And that makes it challenging if you need to go to the restroom, you have to find somebody to watch your booth. So again, kind of just looking at all these things when you're trying to decide if a market is for you. Next slide, please. We talked about some market programs and offerings, at looking to see what markets may have. So food assistant programs, just kind of highlighting why these are beneficial. They're going to increase the customer base because it's going to be more accessible for more people. It's going to increase vendor sales because, again, more customers are going to equate to probably more sales. These type of assistance programs are good at growing markets because, again, it's expanding the reach that you can go, where you can go to find people. It makes the market more welcoming to all community members. And again, it's going to provide access to healthy food to your community regardless of income. And I had mentioned as vendors, I really only look at markets that now offer SNAP and Link because I do want to be in part of markets that are accessible to more people. Next slide, please. Some other programs that markets may offer, kids club activities. With our winter market, we really just started promoting these this past winter, and we saw the market increase drastically in number of customers coming, kids. So again, it's just something that grew the market and as a result was good for the vendors. Markets that offer community partnerships to other nonprofits or organizations that may have kind of similar mission statements as the market is always good. Cooking demonstrations, if people can see how foods are made and if they can try them, that's going to be a huge win-win for the market and vendors. And usually at markets, when they're doing those, they're sourcing items from the vendors in the market. So it's a good way to get your items highlighted, get people to try it, and get people samples and ideas of how to make things. Music at markets just makes for a very comfortable and kind of relaxing environment. Some people look at markets as a social outing and it's something that they come with the family and want to spend time at. Some people come to get their items and then leave. But music is definitely a win-win when it's there. And again, all of these really provide a more kind of welcoming, family-friendly environment for customers, for vendors, and for markets. Next slide, please. I mentioned in the off season, I think this is really a good time to assess if you were in a market previously, or if you're not kind of getting ready to go into them, of how things went. If you're assessing a market, if you keep track of your sales and what you're selling, you can see, was it profitable? Was it in alignment with your goals? And would you want to do it again next year? And I really encourage people to kind of do this year to year. Maybe a market wasn't what you needed it to be, and maybe this next year you decide you want to go in a different direction. But if you're doing any type of tracking, record keeping, that's really going to help you to kind of see how things were and where you want to go this next year. Off season is also a good time, like I said, to look into other markets if you're thinking of expanding or changing. And I also mentioned using metrics for tracking, whether it's just sales, if you're looking at customer attendance, if you're looking at, organizations and programs the market offered, whatnot. The Farmers Market Association, we're going through a metrics training class right now. But I know that we, would be happy to talk to people about metrics. It's a good way just to kind of assess and take stock of where you're at. Next slide, please. So that's kind of my presentation, looking about when you're thinking about markets, some of the questions, you can do a deeper dive into some of it. But does anybody have any questions on anything so far? Okay, well, if anybody ever has questions on anything, please feel free to reach out. I'm assuming we'll be sharing our information and some of this. I'm happy to talk to anybody. But again, I appreciate everybody coming, and I wish everybody the best.
Thank you, Libby. We are going to turn it over to Mary Liz.
All right, thank you, Janie. I am going to share my screen, and let's hope that it works. Okay.
I can see it.
You can see it, great. Just have to. There we go. All right, so thank you all. I do a lot of work with cottage foods, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And if you have any questions, please type it in the chat as we go along, and then at the end I'll review those. You can also, certainly ask me at the end, but sometimes a question will come to you, and if you try and wait till the end, it slips by. So go ahead and type it in the chat, and we'll get there. So as I said, I come to you from the University of Illinois Extension, which is the outreach of the land grant university here in Illinois, and we have a presence in all 102 counties. Why does cottage food matter? What's the big deal? Why do we even talk about it? And what does it really mean? Well, cottage food is made in your home kitchen, and the laws were developed starting in 2012 or across the country a little bit earlier than that in the whole realm of requiring people to make food for sale in a commercial kitchen. Well, that can be tens of thousands of dollars. And so it grew across the United States to develop these cottage food laws, which then grew to what we have today. And so the main focus is to allow people to make safe food products out of their home kitchen. The home kitchen will not ever be inspected by the health department unless there is a complaint or an incident. And so this grew from 2012 with a very limited list of foods to present day, where in 2022, the home to market law came into being. And what this did, it standardized the registration process, making it much more simple for someone to register in their home county with their local health department, but then sell in multiple counties. It also expanded the point of sale to really anywhere where the cottage food provider can sell directly to the consumer. It even allows online sales within the state of Illinois. And it includes some clarification on some food safety issues. And I'll touch on that here in just a little bit. So this shows you exactly what the law looks like. And it says a cottage food operation is based in someone's home kitchen. And that being said, we sometimes have questions about people who say, well, can I go ahead and use a commercial kitchen and then call it cottage food? Well, technically, no. That comes with its own set of rules and regulations. One being that if you are producing food out of a commercial kitchen, your local health department will come and inspect. The cottage food kitchen in your residence, as I said, is not inspected. Well, if you're interested in becoming a producer, that might sound great. So what's your first step? You need to take an American National Standards Institute approved Certified Food Protection Manager's course. Kind of a tongue twister there. It's what we used to call the Food Sanitation Manager's course. It's a comprehensive, nationally approved course and exam, ranging in price, depending on where you are. They are offered online, but also local community colleges are usually offering this course, as is your local extension office, probably. And I say that because there are not very many of us nutrition and wellness folks scattered throughout the state, but we all do teach the course. Your next step would be to register with your local health department. That means the health department in the county where you reside and where your home kitchen is. A couple of examples of the ANSI course are the National Registry and Serve Safe. As I said, these are offered online as well. You need to register with your local health department. Not a complicated issue. They're going to ask you to fill out a form. They want to know, where do you live? What do you intend to make? And we encourage people to list every possibility because it's much easier to list it at first rather than to amend this list later. Once you have done that, your health department might ask for a few areas of clarification for some items that might need refrigeration, that sort of thing. Some of our canned foods are high acid or acidified foods. They will be asking you for a food safety plan, but pretty straightforward, not all that complicated. They can charge up to $50, and this is renewable annually. Some counties are not charging anything, just depends on your county. So as I said, you can sell anywhere as long as it is direct to the consumer. You cannot sell your products to a grocery store and then have them resell it. You cannot sell your products to a restaurant for them to be used in their menu. So only direct to the consumer. If you're a part of a CSA, if you are the sole provider of the CSA, then of course you can include cottage foods. But let's say you want to include a loaf of bread in someone else's CSA boxes. That is not allowed because, again, that is not directly you to the consumer. All right, so what can you sell? This is the huge improvement. Any food or drink not on the prohibited foods list. Well, what's prohibited? And I'm going to give you a QR code at the end, and you can go to our U of I Extension website that lists all of these things, just a veritable feast of information on cottage food. So I'm just going to go over this fairly quickly, but on the prohibited list are many of your obvious things that have been associated with foodborne illness. Now you're going to look at those first three and you're going to say, well, I've seen those at farmers markets. Yes, but that's not cottage food. That is a different registration process. And Janie is going to show you a chart listing all those possibilities and where you go for registration here in the next presentation. Low acid foods are not allowed, but acidified foods are. Homemade drink, this is another confusing item. That's why it gets its own slide. You'll say, well, I have seen people serving coffee at farmers markets or, other beverages made on site. Yes, but then that is a concession stand, and that is required a temporary food permit from the local health department. In order to qualify as cottage food, your homemade drink, non-alcoholic, of course, must be made in your home kitchen and then brought in a sealed container to the farmer's market. If you want to sell it in the shelf stable state, then it must be processed in a boiling water bath, or you can sell it chilled. But it is not the type where I'm pouring something into a glass, giving it to a customer for them to drink. Can I sell it? I always put this in here because these are some of our most frequent questions. Condiments, sure, as long as it is not more than 5% alcohol. Spaghetti sauce, sure, as long as it doesn't include some of the prohibited ingredients. And canned corn or dilly beans, those things, as long as they have been acidified, but regular canned, home canned vegetables, which are naturally very low in acid, are not allowed. So canned corn as part of a relish, sure. Green beans, if they're those dilly beans or pickled green beans, sure. Pumpkin butter, that's really a scary substance, as is pepper jelly. We want to make sure you're using an approved recipe that renders those to have a pH of 4.6 or lower. If you're selling baked goods with cheese, this is something your health department's going to want listed on your application. They're going to want to talk to you about it. They want to see if that truly is going to be a safe product, because as we know, Cottage Foods has a no dairy listing. So, but if you have like Asiago bagels, for example, your local health department might allow that because it's a very small amount of cheese, it's dry, that sort of thing. But what we can't sell are pizzas ready, take and bake, if that makes sense. Buttercream icing. We spent hours talking about this, and yes, it is allowed. I've thrown the word acidified around a couple of different times. And what we mean by that is something that is naturally acidic or a food that you have added acid to. So things like tomatoes, pickles, sauerkraut, kimchi, chilled coleslaw, those are considered acidified foods. The sauerkraut and kimchi are fermented foods. And so their acid is developed through the fermentation process. And again, what your local health department is going to ask you for is, if you're using a recipe that comes from an approved source, what we mean by that is it coming from the USDA or a home or any state cooperative extension service. What we don't want you to do is be making up a salsa recipe, for example. Your friends tell you, you make the best salsa on the planet and you should sell it. Well, that's great. But if you want to sell it as a cottage food in a shelf-stable jar, then we're going to ask you to have that recipe tested and submit a food safety plan. So what do we mean by a food safety plan? Well, it actually is exactly what it says. It's a plan. What you need to do is get with your local health department. They'll probably have a form online, but they're just going to ask you, what are you going to do to create this product? You're going to go step by step what you intend to do. And your health department will help you change that or edit that a little bit to make sure you're following all of the food safety steps necessary. They're also going to ask that you have your product tested by an independent lab. And we have that in the next slide here. But why are we so picky about the home canned foods? Well, the reason being is that the foodborne illness, Clostridium botulinum, or we call it botulism, can be associated with home canned foods. And so we know that as cottage food producers, you don't want to make anyone sick. You certainly don't want anyone to get an illness that could lead to death. And so that's why we want to make sure every food safety step is in place. And so we ask that you process your foods according to the approved recipes, and that you use good quality equipment and canning products in order to render your final product safe. I mentioned having it tested in an independent lab. All of these labs are very willing. I've actually spoken with each of these in person, and they're very willing to test small batches for independent producers. Most of them have a very nominal fee involved, and it's not as intimidating as it may sound. Chilled and frozen products, I include this because in the cottage food law, it does state that chemical or mechanical refrigeration is not required. As long as you can keep your chilled product at 41 degrees or below, you can use a hard-sided cooler that's easy to clean. Labels are required on every product with more than one ingredient. And again, we have samples of these on our website, but every product must have the name and county of the food operation, common name of the product, date the product was processed, your registration number that you received from the local health department, an ingredient list, descending order by weight, allergen labeling as specified in federal labeling requirements. Again, we'll have examples of this. And the phrase, this product was produced in a home kitchen, not subject to public health inspection. That may also process common food allergens. If you have food safety concerns, contact your local health department. Here's what a label could look like. And then at the point of sale, even if you're selling online, this statement has to be easy to see by your consumers. Sampling is allowed, and you'll have to get a sampling certificate from IDPH or work with your local health department in order to do that. If you want to just bring samples already cut in little containers, you really don't have to do anything, but if you want to cut them on site, there are a few requirements. And again, just to wrap it up, take the course, the ANSI course, register at your local health department, and make sure you're working with your local health department. Libby mentioned that. They are your ally, not your enemy. Everyone wants the same thing. We want satisfied, happy, healthy customers. And a little commercial here, we do have an online self-paced course that shows you how to set up and run your cottage food business. And here are some resources. And there's the QR code if you would like to go to our website, or you can just Google Illinois Extension cottage food. In addition to our website, and this is also on our website, we have worked on the Illinois Cottage Food Guide. We also have, and Janie's going to share a little bit with you with the Farmers Market Guide. Huge statewide effort to bring all the information to you under 2 complete documents. We are super excited about them. We think that they're very comprehensive. We know they're very comprehensive and great tools for you to use. As I said, again, our website is very comprehensive as far as cottage food, but we also have good information about how to can foods safely. There's an Illinois Cottage Food Facebook group, which is a great way to talk with future cottage food producers or current cottage food producers. But again, just know that that's a peer-to-peer, and I check it periodically, and for the most part, people are putting accurate information, but not always. So if you have a question, I'd suggest you contact Illinois Stewardship Alliance, the Illinois Farmers Market Association, or University of Illinois Extension, and I'm going to type my contact info in the chat. In the future, the University of Illinois is going to expand its food processing lab. That hopefully, and you can't see me on camera, but I'm crossing my fingers, hopefully we will be able to test your products locally very soon. All right. So in a nutshell, that is cottage food. As I said, I'm going to take a minute, type my contact info in the chat, and then I'll take questions.
Any questions for Mary Liz?
Okay, let me look.
Yeah, yes, I have one.
Great.
At our market, we currently have 6 or 7 registered cottage food vendors.
Mhm.
As a farmer's market manager, I don't have time to act as the policeman, so to speak.
Right.
Is their
Yes.
product properly labeled? I know most of them are doing everything right. Are we as a market, are we liable at somewhere along the line if we don't, if we're not the policeman, so to speak?
I am so glad that you asked that question. And no, you're not the policeman. And just do the best you can, making sure. I think and someone else can hop in here because I'm not a market manager, but I would assume that when your vendors apply, you would ask them, are you registered with your local health department? And we have encouraged folks to bring their certifications and display them right there along with that placard that says not inspected, that gives them a certain amount of credentials. So yeah, you're not bound to go from booth to booth every single week to inspect folks. I wouldn't expect that, and I don't think your health department expects that either.
Yeah, I do keep them informed that our health department could stop in at any time for no reason at all. And,
right. And just because the health department's not going to come and inspect your kitchen doesn't mean that they don't have the right to walk through the farmer's market and take a look at things. Yeah, absolutely.
Just to add one comment to that is, we farmers market managers are not the food police, and we don't expect that. But in this true day and age of litigation, I would expect that if you have a farmers market vendor that is going to be sued, that the market would probably also be sued. So I think it's good for you to be very aware and to, but not see your role as the police. That's the opportunity to connect with your local health department if you're seeing things that you're not comfortable with or you don't think follows the cottage food law.
Melissa brings up a good question. If you can't fit all of the info on the label, can you use a QR code? That was brought up in one of our discussions, one of our statewide discussions. Janie, you'll probably recall this too. And the answer from IDPH is no. If you do have something like, I don't know, a piece of candy maybe, and you can't get it all on there, you can talk with your local health department. They'll give you a variance that maybe you could hand those folks a little piece of paper or something, but work with your local health department on that too. Yeah, we thought the QR code would be a great idea. And maybe it will be in the future, but not yet.
Any other questions for Mary Liz?
Well, good luck to you. And this time of year, I love answering cottage food questions. So feel free to contact me. And, if people come to you, you can refer them to us, and we're happy to help.
Right. All right. Well, we're going to just talk about food safety real quickly from the broad perspective. Farmers markets, as Mary Liz said, have a variety of food safety regulations that apply to them. Cottage food is one. And when we talk from a vendor's perspective, it is often the one that vendors are most interested in knowing about, because it truly is one of those great ways to launch a business with little capital or investment and to test and see whether you've got something that is marketable and is something that your particular audience is interested in. So we highly recommend beginning a business through the cottage food channel. But environmental health, we really see as partners with farmers markets. We've been really pleased this year to sit down with environmental health professionals from across Illinois, Illinois Department of Ag, Illinois Department of Public Health, and then other farmers and farmers market and other not-for-profits that support this kind of work, and to work together on food safety for farmers markets. Environmental health sees them, their role is to provide guidance and education. They do issue your licenses and registration, and they are the ones that are charged with enforcing the laws and the regulations. There is a brand new farmers market food safety guide. It is available at ilfma.org in the resource tab, or it lives at Illinois Farm Bureau. So it is pages and pages of references and information about all of the different regulations that apply to farmers markets. Now, I don't expect any of you to become farmers market food safety gurus like John was mentioning. No, we don't expect you to know that. But I really do highly recommend that you become very familiar with the regulations that apply to you and your business, so that it is something where you can ask your health department really great questions and you can have a very informed conversation with them. One of the things that is part of the food safety guide, which does apply to most people selling food at farmers markets, is product transparency. This is especially important in this day and age of wanting to be able to trace the origin of food in case there would be a foodborne illness outbreak. But that if a vendor is selling food, they have to post a point of sale placard that includes your label or a packing slip or a physical address, whatever that happens to be. It's also fine if it's just on the banner behind you. It doesn't have to be on every single product, but we do want to make sure that your customer base knows where that product is from. Now, if in fact that product does not originate on your farm or from your home or wherever we're talking about, then you do have to provide that information as well. And it does say that if you don't know where it's from, the vendor most where the product was purchased, so that if you are selling someone else's product at your stand, you don't carry watermelon and cantaloupe, but a neighbor farm does. So near the watermelon and cantaloupe on your particular booth, you would put information about the farm, where those products are from. And then that satisfies the product transparency law. Now, not to get you hyperventilating when we think about farmers markets, but farmers markets are complicated because there are so many different permits and so many different things that apply to them. And so we just put this slide in to kind of give you an idea of all the different things that go into a farmer's market from a food safety perspective. And again, it's not to overwhelm or to assume that you're going to know all this, but again, to just inform and help you understand that you really do need your partnership with your local health department to try and understand the best practices within the lane where you find yourself. All right, so now we're going to move into marketing, and specifically going to go through some slides that Natalie Kenny Marquez, who's one of our ILFMA board members, put together. She owns her own marketing firm, and so she addresses marketing. But I'm also going to ask David and the rest of our team if they would participate in this discussion as well. So first question, and you can use the chat or you can unmute. What do farmers market customers value at farmers markets? What do you all think? What do they value?
A good and exciting market, I would say. I love that.
Yeah, good and exciting. Market, freshness, price. Okay. Other things? Quality, quality food and products. Yes. Other things? I think post-COVID, one of the advantages, or one of the things that COVID taught us, is the value of local food and the importance of local food and the importance of supporting local. And so trying to get that message across at our markets to reinforce that, because I think our customers basically saw that during COVID, food was not as accessible and that local food was consistent. Other things? I think Libby mentioned fun. It has to be an inviting, enjoyable atmosphere. The more that you can do to enhance that, the better. Affordability is one of those things. Okay. We actually see from research that in season, farmers markets are very competitive price-wise with local grocers. And maybe not for unique or especially like the first week that strawberries are available, they are not going to be competitive with a grocery store because they're a limited availability product. But you will see as the season goes on that the prices at a farmer's market tend to be competitive with local grocers. And obviously some of the products that you can get at a farmer's market are not available at grocers as well. Freshness, varieties, experience, conversation with the growers. Yeah, when was the last time you asked your cashier at the grocery store how to make something from the products that you were interested in buying? I always find the reverse. People see what I buy and they're like, well, what are you going to do with that? So anyway. Okay.
What's a cashier?
Yes.
Most of them self-checkout.
That's right. Well, that's right. There's not even a person anymore, right? So the community experience at a farmer's market is becoming more and more unique, right? Yeah. Yeah. Seeing that SNAP benefits were in use made me happy for the sector of people that are using that program. It makes me very happy to see that at markets as well. Yes. Other things? Well, when you're putting your plan together about marketing your product, I think it's important to keep the customer in mind. One of the things that I find is that when I go to a local grocer, they are trying to set up and make their produce section look like a farmer's market, right? So one of the things I think we need to think about is, are there in fact ways that we could, without changing the model of what we do at farmers markets, make our system easier for customers because they're used to a grocery situation. One thing I think about is carrying stuff. So in a grocery situation, I have a cart, right? In a farmer's market, I have a bag. I love it when farmers markets have wagons, or I wouldn't call it a sophisticated concierge service, but I often see like a Boy Scout or Cub Scout group that will hold your groceries for you. And then those kids will walk you to the car so that you don't have to carry everything yourself. So those are the kinds of things that I think, just keeping those things in mind, the contrast between what you can do at a farmer's market and what you often see at a grocery. Okay. Other thoughts about what customers value?
We had maybe mentioned this, but for vendors, I mean, to have like a clean table, you don't want to be on your phone. I've had a customer recently call me out on it. I was doing a social media post for our booth, and a customer came up and said, don't mind me, I'll wait until you're done. And I apologized, got off my phone, and then they walked away. So it made me realize like what that customer experience is. So, as a vendor, to make sure you're engaging with your customers, again, a kind of a clean, clutter-free table, just gives a good impression and shows people that, you're there to do a good thing, and it'll leave a lasting impression with them.
I agree. We see a lot of vendors that are not particularly engaging with customers. I really enjoy when I walk by and somebody says hello or has something of interest. I am very susceptible to sampling. Sampling is something that makes me feel like I'm invited into their booth to talk to them about their product. And again, to just be sure that I really like it before I buy it. And I think that's another way that we can engage customers and provide that opportunity for conversation and engagement at the market. Okay, fresh water bowl for the dogs. Yes, especially on hot days. I think that would probably be very well appreciated if your market allows dogs. That'd be great. Yes.
Well, Janie,
Yes.
we didn't have markets last week at our local markets, so that was my yearly chance to visit other markets. And my big pet peeve at two different markets was lack of pricing on the items. They had one particular vendor had a 20-foot long display table with produce all up and down it. And they had a sign that if you had really good eyes, you might be able to see the prices that was located in the middle. When you asked the question, what is the price? Their question was, it's on the sign. Don't tell me it's on the sign. Don't do that. I'm probably going to walk away as a customer. Price, I like to see prices right on the items. That's one of my pet peeves. My second big pet peeve is vendors who come to the market who hope to sell out and be gone in an hour or two. That, number one, it looks bad for the market. One of the markets I did visit was a very large one last weekend with over 100 vendors. Most of their vendors were there until 10 till 12. It was a whole different story, but there was customers coming into the parking lot at 11:30. So people, like, if you say you're open from 8 to noon, customers expect you to be open with product from 8 to noon. So off of my soapbox.
Thank you, John. Well, that's really fun. You got to visit other markets. That's great. I do think the thing about pricing is very important. If something is not marked, people don't like to feel foolish, and they don't like to find out something is more expensive than maybe they wanted to spend or that they can afford. And so if things are not marked with a price, it's very difficult for someone to make a choice to go ahead and even ask. Most of the time they'll just walk away, right? But the second thing about pricing, I just bring this up as a customer, but I've learned over time shopping with other people, when I take them to markets with me, that when they see like a box of tomatoes or a box of peaches or something, and it says $7, they think that's the same as the grocery store. So they look at those peaches and say $7. Well, it's $2 a pound at the grocery store. Here it's $7 a pound. But what they don't get is that you're selling them in that box, 2.5 pounds. And so sometimes I think it's just really valuable to put out an approximate. I mean, you don't want to be held necessarily to weighing every item unless that's part of your business model, but at least letting the customer know what its familiar equivalent might be at the grocery store, so that 4 zucchini is what, £1.50, and that's about so many cents a pound. So that might be something that helps your customer base feel more comfortable with your product, especially if they're sold in a similar fashion as to what they're familiar with. All right. I think we'll skip this next question and come back to it if we have time, but instead going to go down here. All right. We want to know what you do to enhance your success and how you tell your story. So how do you, either question, what do you do to enhance your success, or how do you tell your story?
Crystal, based on what you comment, was it Connie and Crystal? I like both of your comments, and I feel like they could probably help us answer these questions. So if you're wanting to share, calling you out.
Sure, I'm happy to share. Prior to this role at the Land Connection, I was a farmer, diversified veg, and we farmed into the Springfield market. And I was, in addition to being one of 2 farmers, I was also the media manager, because you have to wear many hats, like in this role with farming as well. So I always made sure, just like a tip, I always made sure to get great photos before we were fully set up, or after we were fully set up, but before the market opened, so that I could just fully engage with customers. That was something that prior to me coming into this farm, we didn't have really good feedback. And after I came and was like, remembering people's grandkids were over last weekend, and just really engaging with people and remembering little tidbits about our customers, that really means a lot to them, when they're walking up and it's like, hey, how's it going? How was your trip, wherever. I don't know, those little touches just really, they make people feel good, and they make them want to spend their money at your booth.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
I agree with that. I'll chime in too. And I think that also, just like remembering those little things and having those conversations, it's like making friends. They want to keep coming back to see you every week, because, it's like visiting friends. I would also often just give away little things. I'm not talking about, anything big, but just like a gesture. If somebody was really, really curious about something I had, I often would have heirloom varieties, and sometimes people might not be familiar. I would give away, like, well, just try it. And if you like it, then come back next week and you can buy some. But I would just give them a little bit with whatever else they were purchasing. And people really liked that. And then, for example, I had kohlrabi one time, which, and some people were not familiar. And I partnered up with another vendor who was selling apples from their orchard, and I gave away little recipe cards for like an apple kohlrabi slaw. So just a free little recipe card that let them know what to do with it, rather than me just telling them, oh, you can do this. I sent them on their way with a cute little recipe card, and just little things like that. I think people appreciated. And again, as far as telling our stories, the conversation with those heirloom things, like, why do I do it? What is an heirloom? Why do I think they're interesting, or what is it, what's special about this variety, and all of that kind of thing. It's just the conversation, storytelling, like the photos and the marketing online and the social media is super important, but then also in person, just having those conversations. Like I said, I think that people it's part of the whole experience and part of why they like shopping there. It's the little bit of social time too, and a little bit of the lifestyle. Like, they kind of feel like they're learning something and taking part in that, the process of local foods and being part of that system. So I think that went a long way too.
Those are great ideas. And I love the part, people do love to be known, and they love to be noticed, and they really appreciate when you recognize them as someone who's inquisitive, inquiring, or as a regular customer, and you want to show your appreciation that way. Other things.
I love the conversation piece that comes with the market. I typically like to stand outside of my stand whenever I can. I did farmers market, I think 2 years, 2020, 2021. And I'm good at conversation. I'm good at connecting with people. So anytime I can do that, I want to take the time and do that. Talk about what are you growing in your garden? What's your favorite flower? What's going on with you today? And have those organic conversations, which is really nice. Sometimes farmers markets can get a little long and we get heavy traffic flow and then it slows down and then it picks up. So I always like to have music if music is not, live at the market. So that's always nice. And I also on, slow time, I like to walk around and also connect with the other vendors and see what they're up to, how their sales are going. And build a connection there. And I make sure that I make my rounds anytime, even say hi, hello, goodbye, or help set up. I think that helps out because then someone mentioned social media, then we can give each other shout outs. Connie, I love the connection of the recipes of the kohlrabi and the apples. That's great. Now I'm thinking of okay, when I'm back at markets, this is something that I like to do. Hey, maybe from these 3 vendors, you can create this recipe right there. And that's community building. And then it's a fun experience for the customer as well. So that's a lot of fun. How do I tell my story? I think very organically, depending on how the conversation might start with a customer. I think slowly I'll bring in local food or my product or how we got started or why we got into it, because in that conversation, we'll also find out that everyone has a story and has a fun recipe or has a fun connection. And maybe someone recently moved and they missed their farmer's market back at their home. So it's just all right, we're just trying to find community in place, which is nice. So that's kind of how I enhance my success and how I tend to share my story at markets, which is nice. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Belen.
Yeah, I think it's great because farmers markets are more than just a place to go buy food. They are far more. And I think what you all do to enhance that experience, just even by connection and community, whether it's by the product you grow, you sell, what's the story behind it. I find it's really fun. Sometimes I have the privilege of taking people on tours of farmers markets, and I give them a little bit of a snapshot of the vendors that I know and tell them a little bit about their story. And I think it enhances a connection, but I also see it translate into purchases. And I think another contrast to the farmers market, which I see, is that lines typically don't upset people at a market, where traditional system, if you have a long line, people are huffing and puffing, right? But at a market, it's oftentimes a place to have a conversation with the people around you. What are you making? What are you going to do with that? What are you going to buy? And people seem to be attracted actually to the booth or the opportunity that has the longest line, not the shortest one. So I think our customers are there for engagement in addition to their food products.
One other thing on kind of telling your story, something that I really found as vendor, we've been cottage food, not only showing our products on social media, but really bringing people onto the farm in a way that they can't be there. So showing pictures of our farm, of our animals, it really connects people to our story. Also, one thing that I'm not good about is telling about us, about what we do, our involvement in it. People love that. And again, it just connects them to kind of what you're doing more. And kind of on the flip side of that, when you're doing pictures and things, share them with your market manager. Because I can tell you from a market manager standpoint that I don't really, when I was doing it, I didn't have time to go through and comb through our vendors' profiles to find pictures of their products and to highlight them. If you give that to vendors, it's going to make it so much easier for them to promote you as a vendor and connect you to the market. So just a couple more kind of tidbits that I've learned over the years.
Thank you. All right.
Hello, this is Joellen.
Yes.
I had a bakery business from my home. I had a licensed kitchen, so I ran my business much differently. But when my daughter took it over, she did things differently and she started going to markets. And something that she was very good at was the interaction with the customer. I would go to help and be amazed at just how good she was at explaining the product and the process. And another thing that she believes very highly in is making those other vendor connections. And she would, you know, do a live before every market started and go around to as many vendors as she could to engage and basically inviting people to come to the market, um, and tagging these other vendors in so that all those different customer bases from all the vendors were being welcomed to come. And that was really successful with her. I was amazed at how many people, maybe they didn't plan to come to the market, but they threw on their shoes and showed up. And it does, that piece is hard for a lot of people. Marketing yourself it's hard. People are not naturally good at that. They're just not. And so you just have to keep showing up for yourself and trying and making sure that those connections you make, that you draw those people in with you, whether it's tagging them in on social media or bring them into your live. But it is very important, and it's more of a social thing at the market. And it's very easy, I know from experience, to be so doggone tired when you get to the market that it's hard to execute those pieces, but those are the most important pieces. So just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And I do think a market has an opportunity to be a family, whether it's the family that includes the customer base, whether it is a family of vendors. I'm always touched when somehow I just happen upon, a vendor that just got married and the customers want to all hear about the wedding and the honeymoon, and they're so glad he's back. And, it's just, it's much more of a family feel. We really care what happens to the individual vendors. Or to watch a vendor who's had a new baby be showered with different gifts from vendors as they, come up and talk to them early in the morning in the market. So I think that this community experience is special and unique and something that we can cultivate and grow. So wish you well with that. Just even talking about, overall marketing, I think hearing from peers and hearing ideas about what works and what's important is really key. These are some tips that were put together, like I said, by Natalie, our marketing person. And just some high level ideas about making sure that you have a strategy would be tip number one. Not just kind of willy-nilly posting when you think about it, but really having a plan, whatever that happens to be, thinking about, what social media platforms even you're using. We do tend to find markets in particular on Facebook, which is great, but that's a different demographic than who's on Instagram. That tends to be a younger audience, and then TikTok would be even a younger audience. So you do need to think about those kinds of things as you are thinking about putting together a plan for your business or your market. Definitely leveraging social media with authentic connections, share posts, comments, diversity in messaging. It's always really fun to maybe try something new. What we're learning right now, one of the real ways people are connecting is through reels and through video. That the stagnant post, maybe what I see a lot of markets do is just, for example, put up a list of vendors that'll be there this week. Well, and the list doesn't have hyperlinks and it's the same every single week. And so it would be much more fun to do a reel or a Facebook Live that walks through the market and shows what's going on, like you were mentioning a little bit earlier, to try and be a little bit more interactive, but again, thinking it through and making a plan. The third tip is, why does what I am posting or talking about matter to my customer? Can you incorporate promoting others as well as yourself? Tell compelling stories. And then it's even possible these days to schedule things out. I know that's what we do as an association. We come together, we have planning about every 2 weeks. We talk about the posts, they're planned out. So it just happens so that if life gets in the way, social media still happens. And I would highly recommend thinking about something like that. Revitalize your message. This says 2021, but 2023 is a good time to do that. Again, you just really do want to tell your story, show your images, seasonal items, specialty things. I think behind the scenes is really, really fun. How can you incorporate kittens, dogs, and children? They all are very compelling, and we see that there is more interest in those kinds of posts. So if that's part of your behind the scenes, your animals or your family or small people, those kinds of things really do have to bring in, they really do spark a little bit more interest than some of the other kinds of things. Establish, expertise, talk about your milestones. And again, I would reiterate that ILFMA is not always good about talking about our own success, but I think that's one of the things too, is that when you do promote yourself, you do promote your business, it really is good to engage customers or potential customers. And you might even be finding new market opportunities because of what you're doing. Be memorable, be relatable, drive action. It's always good to end with an action statement. And again, live videos tend to be the way that people are more likely to interact. I know as I scroll through, I'm much more interested in either people that have posted at least multiple pictures of something or a reel or a video, rather than reading a continuation of a printed word. And that's generational. We find the younger your audience, the less likely that they are to be willing to read long articles, but would be much more interested in something that's interactive. But do know what the impact is. Facebook is really good. So all of the meta platforms are really good at allowing you to find insights on what was useful, what was liked, how are your engagements going, where are your people from. For example, ILFMA has primarily a female audience. We are in a certain demographic, and so it's very interesting. So if you want to engage new people outside of that, you have to be a little more thoughtful. Or if that was in fact exactly who we were going for, then we'd be like, yay, good job, keep going. So those metrics really do help you, and they're going to collect those for you whether you collect them or not. So I would definitely take advantage of all the information that's already there that you can look at and try and get some input from. One of the things is just go through your stuff and make sure everything works. I was very grateful the other day. I got an email from a colleague who had been on our website looking for resources and found a dead end link. And so it's really good to just even go through your website or make sure that everything in your profile, whether it's website or your manage my market or your market maker profile, all of those things are as up to date as possible and that everything works. Double check everything, because you'd be surprised at the number of things that, well, at least I miss. Maybe you're different than I, but it really looks much more professional when all of those things stack up nicely, are well presented, and work. And again, this talks about cooperation. Do you have people that are your regular customers? Maybe it isn't on your radar, but how do you get them to endorse your product? Maybe they'll go home and comment on it or talk about what they make. I know occasionally I've posted a picture about what I've made with a farmer's product or a vendor's product. And it's kind of started some very interesting interactions. But those kinds of things, nobody asked me to do it, but if they did, as a regular customer, I'd probably be more than willing to do that kind of things. But make sure that you connect with people that you know, think highly of your product, keep people in the loop, participate every time there's something special that's going on at the market. And certainly you can reach out to local media with information about you and your product and your market. And make your stand amazing. You know, maybe it shouldn't be this way, but we really are attracted to a well put together, well designed, clean, bright, full booth. When you come upon a booth or a stand that doesn't have a tablecloth, just has one layer of food thrown on it or one layer of product, it really doesn't appear thoughtful. And maybe that was the best that person could do that day, and that's fine. But if you want to move to that next level, to be noticed and to be memorable, then you need to kind of take some steps to make sure that your stand is somehow memorable, and that it's clear, that it has good signage. And I think that will serve you very, very well. People are attracted to that. They're more likely to come and hang out at your booth if it's something that's kind of drawing them in. So here are some examples of, you know, using your stand as its brand extension. I've always appreciated, for example, when I buy product, that even my brown paper bag has a stamp that has the logo of the business that I bought it from at the market. You know, what can you do to extend the brand so people remember who they bought it from, what their experience is, and then will likely become a follow-up customer as well. So that's what we have for you. I don't know, have there been some comments, David, as we've been going through I've missed? Oh, there's some Facebook groups out there that are focused on market displays that have some really great ideas. That's great. It's nice to give incentives for sales if you possibly can find a way to do that. Libby says, as a vendor, I love when customers share pictures of things they've made and then share it on social media. I think that that's something you could do. As a vendor, you could even have a QR code that takes them directly to your Facebook or Instagram page where they could, you know, post their picture. And that would be something that'd be very simple to do, pretty straightforward, and hopefully would bring a little more interest in your booth, your product, and build a customer base.
Janie, just after my tour, I came back and